What's up, golf fans, and welcome back to another episode of Fairways and Dreams. I'm your host, Jeff Hartman, on this Tuesday podcast as I talk about anything golf related that I want to discuss. And we do have a lot to discuss, and we will touch on the latest news and notes in the game of golf after the Players' Championship wrapped up at TPC Sawgrass this past weekend. There is a lot to discuss here, and I wanted to talk about how mastering the big moments in golf is kind of like the undercurrent of today's podcast. Mastering those big moments in golf. And this isn't just a golf thing. This is a sports thing. There's a mental component of every sport, every activity that you do where competition, even if it's internal competition, is present. So whether it's an individual sport, whether it's a team sport, whether it's a super physical sport like football or something that's a lot less physical like golf, it doesn't matter. There is a component of these games, these activities that require mental fortitude, mental strength, the ability to rise up or the ability to cave under said pressure. And golf already is a sport of many ups and downs. You have moments where you feel like you have it all figured out. And then you see very clearly, even at the biggest stage in the game, moments where you realize you have nothing figured out. And if you look at the PGA Tour, the last three tournaments that we have seen, we've seen nothing but collapses down the stretch. It started with Shane Lowry when he had a 3-shot lead heading into 16 at PGA National. The bear trap, he puts 2 in the water. Next thing you know, he loses. And that was to Nico Echevarria. Then you had last week, Daniel Berger was 1 hole away from being a wire-to-wire winner. And this is obviously the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. He collapses, loses to Akshay in a playoff. And then most recently, you have Ludwig Åberg at TPC Sawgrass, Players' Championship. He has a 3-shot lead heading into Sunday, and he ends up losing by 4 shots. He went from a dominant first place finish to actually finishing barely in the top 5. This has been such a strange start to the year in this respect, and especially the last 3 tournaments. The one thing you have to ask yourself, what goes into a collapse? What happened to Shane Lowry at the bear trap that caused him to have a complete and utter meltdown? What happened with Daniel Berger, who was in control? I mean, he was the definition of in control of his game, only to see his lead evaporate down the stretch and eventually come in second place. What happened to Ludwig on Sunday when everything looked to be absolutely perfect setup for the biggest win of his career would have been winning the Players' Championship out on Sunday. And instead, well, he kind of follows the other two's lead, especially Lowry, and he starts finding the water. He starts going wayward, and everything that was solid about his game, it just felt like it just fell out. Was it a mental breakdown? Was it a physical breakdown? Well, we may never know unless they're being completely honest with the media. But Ludwig is a pretty open guy. He's typically that guy that's going to say, like, hey, I thought I was playing good golf. I just had a couple bad swings. And then now all of a sudden, this is what happens. You see yourself out of control and out of control of your own destiny. You're not leading the tournament anymore. The physical breakdown, I mean, you could have maybe a player talk about the exact issue with their swing. These guys are professionals. The Lowrys, the Bergers, the Åbergs. These breakdowns don't just happen. And it's not just one or the other. It's not a mental collapse. It's not just a physical. It is all of it. And it bleeds into the confidence that you can make the shots necessary to win a golf tournament. And so this is where you have the collapse, you have the breakdowns. And I think, in my personal opinion, focusing on a collapse, that is a purely negative slant. When you're playing in a tournament and you have a bad hole, if you sit there and think, oh my gosh, I'm folding like a cheap lawn chair, you're automatically going into the negative aspect of your game. You're giving that part of your game oxygen, life. You're giving it attention, but you could be doing the opposite. And I'm gonna look at Cam Young because I think that Cam Young's performance, not just Sunday, but especially on Saturday too, deserves plenty of credit. Just like Akshay's did last week with Berger. He came storming back, and it wasn't as if Berger just completely fell off the planet. Ludwig certainly fell off, but Cam Young found himself in a tie with Matt Fitzpatrick down the stretch. And so he goes to 17, and you're looking at it, and it's such a daunting hole with the wind. And you saw Matt Fitzpatrick hit first, and he hits it to the middle of the green. Safe shot. It's what you should do. And Cam Young easily could have said, just play it safe. Just play it safe. Get it to the middle of the green. Let's get our 2-putt, maybe a little bit aggressive with the birdie putt. But he didn't. He went right after it. I believe he stuck it to about between 6 to 8 feet, and he drains the putt for birdie. And so now he's tied up heading into 18. And this is a quote that he had, and he told media this after the round of golf. He said that when he was standing on the 18th tee box, now you go back a day, on Saturday, he hit it into the water. And he said, look, on Saturday, I didn't hit a bad shot. He said the wind got it. I missed it a 1 yard to the left. But still, that you think about that's in the back of your head. You just come off a birdie. You're tied with Matt Fitzpatrick. You have the honors on the tee box, and you're standing there with an opportunity to potentially win the Players' Championship. And, yesterday you had put one in the drink. It would be easy for those negative thoughts to kind of bleed into him, bleed into his mental psyche and in his thought process. Instead, what did he tell himself? I'm going to hit the best shot in my life right here. Now, you talk about the Shane Lowry situation, the Daniel Berger situation, the Ludwig Oberg situation, and you could see how things would start to spiral out of control. And all of a sudden, you're not believing those positive thoughts anymore. But the fact that this guy, Cam Young, who the day before on 18 put one in the water, which would have been devastating, what does he do? He tells himself, I'm going to hit the best shot in my life right here. And he does. And he pipes a drive 375 yards on the par 4 18th, setting himself up with about 100 yards into the green. And don't think for a second that didn't put pressure on Matt Fitzpatrick, because Fitzpatrick, wary of the water, hits it too straight, goes into the pine straw, and he's not able to get to the green in 2. Fitzpatrick eventually gets on in 3, and then all of a sudden, he's looking at a putt for par. Cam Young puts his on. He misses his birdie putt. Fitzpatrick misses his par putt. And Cam Young taps in from about 10 inches to secure the 2026 Players' Championship. When you think about mastering the big moments in golf, when you think about that in any endeavor in life, mastering the big moments, I have to think that for me at least, having the confidence that you are going to achieve success, that you're going to do what you sought out to do, that you're not sitting there thinking on the tee box on 18, oh, Cam, just don't hit it left again. Don't put it in the water like you did yesterday. When you say those things to yourself, you are bringing that negative connotation into your life. You're bringing all those negative thoughts. Instead, what is he saying to himself? It's not, I hope to hit the best shot. It's, I'm going to hit the best shot in my life right here. It's just a different mindset. It's saying, I'm going to do it. Not I hope to do it. Not I dream that I'll do it one day. Not fingers crossed, I'm going to count on all my lucky coin in my pocket. No, he says, I'm going to hit the best shot in my life right here. I don't know. I can't speak for you, the listener or viewer. That resonated with me. It resonated with me in all aspects of life. You know, you have a tough decision to make with work. I'm going to make the right decision. I'm going to be able to do X, Y, or Z. And especially in sports, it's saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out and win a gold medal. I'm going to go out and win this golf tournament. I'm just going to go out and execute my swing to the point where everything that I practiced is going to come to fruition on the course. I thought it was fantastic. It was a tremendous finish for him to birdie 17 and to play 18 the way that he did. Cam Young was absolutely worthy of winning the Players' Championship, and he mastered the big moment. He mastered the big moment. And I think that's obviously what we're talking about here is how can you differentiate between the negative thoughts and the positive thoughts? Because really, if things are going bad, it's easy to downward spiral. It's easy to go down that elevator. It's much more difficult to say, you know what? No, I'm going to focus on hitting the best shot right now. I'm going to hit the best shot of my life right now. And that takes practice. That takes getting, especially for someone like me, especially on the golf course where it's easy for me to mentally unravel, to say, yeah, gosh, I don't feel like I have it today. I don't think I could hit a best shot of my life. No, like that's something I have to change. That's something I have to adjust. That's something I have to get over. And that is, you know what? It's something I say to my kids all the time. Your next shot is your best shot. Next shot, best shot. Get all the nasty negative thoughts and emotions out of your system and then move on. And I do want to give a shout out to Ludwig Oberg, because although Ludwig did collapse down the stretch, he is the epitome of let's not let things get to you. He's the epitome of I just hit a really bad shot. I mean, you're going to see, is he slamming the club down? No. Is he walking way ahead of his caddy? No. He is focused on the task at hand, and that doesn't mean that this is always going to work out. If Cam Young hooked it into the water on 18, he's never going to say in front of anyone, oh, yeah, I said I'm going to hit the best shot of my life right here. He would have said something like, you know, I was comfortable over that ball, and I just pulled it a little bit. But the fact that he was able to mentally psych himself up for it, that's what this is all about. Mastering the big moments in the game of golf. Which, let's talk about the latest news in the game of golf. Cam Young obviously wins the Players, and I think a lot of people are going to point back to they're going to point back to Ludwig's collapse, but I just think that takes away from the way that this tournament finished. You know, Matt Fitzpatrick played some great golf as well. He deserves a lot of credit. I will say there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, the TPC Sawgrass fans were, you know, they were definitely pro Cam Young, and they were very anti Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry, I fall into this category. I root for Americans. I'm an American. And if people have an issue with that, that's fine. If Matt Fitzpatrick would have won the tournament, I'm not going to be pissed off. If I was there, I wouldn't have booed or anything. Ludwig's great. But if there's an American in the mix, I'm going to pull for the American. And I think it was, I forget who it was, and I wish I knew. But on social media, someone was talking about this, and they said, you know, if we watch the Olympic Games and we're watching the American versus Canadian, men's or women's, doesn't matter, a gold medal game, you know, and they're like, okay, well, what is this? Were we rooting for Canada as Americans? No, you're rooting for your country. You go to the World Baseball Classic when the United States is going up against the Dominican in one of the biggest baseball games that we've seen in a very long time, and that includes Major League Baseball. What, if I'm watching this, I'm not supposed to root for Paul Skeens on the mound and the United States team? I'm supposed to somehow feel like I should root for the Dominican? Like, come on. What are we doing? Nationality is a part of golf. The Ryder Cup and the President's Cup are a part of golf. It's the same reason why if you go to like an app like ESPN and you're looking at the leaderboard, they have their country, their nationality, their national flag next to their name. I root for Americans, and I wasn't alone there on that weekend at TPC Sawgrass. And then Matt Fitzpatrick said, look, like, he said, hey, this is nothing compared to Bethpage, which I'm sure it was. But at the same time, please spare me. Like, you know, when the U.S. players go over and play in Europe, especially for the Open Championship, I don't think any of them expect to get the same amount of applause that they do here in the States. Part of it. Just wanted to talk about that because that's being discussed a lot for sure. But Matt Fitzpatrick does a great job down the stretch. He finishes second. And that drive on 18 that I talked about, 375 yards, Cam Young's drive on 18, that was the longest drive since 2003 on that hole. an absolute, I mean, he annihilated that ball. And I was watching it and I thought, oh boy, that is flirting because you're not seeing the distance on the shot when they do the tracer, but it's moving to the left. It's a right to left shot shape. And you're thinking that is going to be flirting with the edge of the water. And then when they saw it land, he hit that ball so far. Incredible. Also, this from the PGA Tour Communications Twitter account. Cameron Young becomes the first players champion to birdie number 17 in each of the final 3 rounds. So 17, though, that's Island Green. That was not daunting for Cameron Young at all. That was one of the clutchest shots that I can remember in recent memory. Just awesome. Absolutely awesome. Now, did want to also talk about in the latest news of golf that Brian Rolap, who's the PGA Tour CEO, he met with media and he spoke before the Players Championship about some changes that could be happening. These are themes of a new, what they're calling a competitive structure. Okay, so there's scheduling themes here. So this is definitely interesting to me. And it shows, in my opinion, how Jay Monahan, who was the prior CEO, he's still involved in the PGA Tour Enterprises. I felt like this guy was doing nothing but trying to compete with Live Golf and some of the other entities when there was no reason to compete with them. Here's some of the talking points that Brian Rolop brought up. So he talked about the season structure. He talked about having 21 to 26, what they call first track events from January to September. And so these first track events is almost going to be not like a relegation, but a way for younger players to play into some of these bigger events. They want consistent fields. They don't want these smaller signature events with no cuts. They want a cut. Thank goodness. There should be a cut line. There should be that pressure. And these players, I feel like some of them almost thrive on it. But they don't want, in this new potential changes that are coming up potentially in 2027, having larger fields with a cut is something they're talking about. They want to open big. They want to start the season at iconic West Coast venues. This is where a lot of people were wondering, are they going to have any more Hawaii swing? Because some people were suggesting that they are going to push the start back of the PGA Tour season until maybe February. Okay, so if they're going to bump everything back to February, then that would mean that they're going to be starting not in Hawaii. They're going to be starting on the West Coast, and they want to start in an iconic West Coast venue. I thought one of the things that Rolop brought up that was fantastic were they want to compete in major markets. This guy comes from the National Football League. The NFL dominates major markets. Big markets, they're there, they're present. Everyone knows they're there. So the major markets, he wants to compete in the biggest cities and those markets. He talked about DC. He talked about New York City, Chicago. If you look what Liv is doing in terms of global markets, yeah, they just had Hong Kong. They had a bunch of other tournaments that are overseas. He's saying in the United States of America, let's go after some of these markets that have rabid fans that would definitely support the tour there, and let's tap into those markets. Also, promotion and relegation between those first and second tracks of events. Players that might be in those first track events, those are the big events. Maybe they don't play well, they go down to the second track, but they can earn their way back up. So a little bit of promotion and relegation. Those that follow the Premier League soccer know all about relegation. And then lastly, enhance the postseason. Match play is being considered during the playoffs. I would be all for the drama of match play as a FedEx Cup playoff scenario or situation. Once they get down to a small enough field, I think that would be fantastic. That would be must-watch television. Once all the majors are done and the team events are done, if they did that, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. Now, none of this stuff that I bring up goes into effect, but it's something that this competition committee, again, hello, NFL, for anyone else that follows the NFL like I do, there is a competition committee. Tiger Woods is on the competition committee. Rolap and a bunch of other former players are there as well. It's good for the game. It's good for the game. So when you hear Tiger Woods talking publicly about, I've got to do this, that, and the other to try and figure out what's going to happen with, the PGA Tour, this is some of the stuff they're working on. So we'll see if any of this comes to fruition. I believe he'll be talking again. Maybe, I don't think it's before the Masters. I actually think it's before the PGA, but we'll keep everything on the down low there. And we'll hopefully have some news in the coming weeks and months. The TGL playoffs are this week. For those that are curious about that, we'll talk about that as it goes on. More and more players are missing from the TGL, meaning Colin Morikawa withdraws. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the Press Podcast, which I did not have a good week. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But hopefully 3 shows for you this week. Hopefully we get a 2-man scramble on Thursday. But we finished out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great start to your week. We will see you tomorrow on the Press. Take it easy.